Give us a sense for, BlindPay's go-to-market strategy. Why Latin America?
If we compare like some emerging markets, okay, LATAM, Africa, and like Asia, in LATAM, there's a huge opportunity, like a lot of money already being moved through traditional rails. The regulatory landscape is still like evolving, and sometimes like you don't want to talk about like Web3 terms, you need to abstract everything and show to the customer like this is the experience.
What do you think is unlocked for these institutions? What's kind of step 2 for these institutions? All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Frontera. Today we're joined by Bernardo from BlindPay. Bernardo, how are you doing?
Pretty good, Kush. Thanks for the opportunity, like for being here and talking a little bit more about the folks. Yeah, I'm Bernardo, the CEO of BlindPay, a stablecoin API for global payments.
Awesome, cool. So, Bernardo, I really love starting off with people's like journey and trajectory. Why are they building what they're building, right? So give us sort of that quick history on yourself and why you decided to venture down this path of building BlindPay.
Yeah, of course. Like it's pretty straightforward. I've been working for the past 7 years as a software engineer and product designer. In my previous job, I had the opportunity to build the first global payroll solution powered by stablecoins. And on this job, like we faced a lot of challenges because at that moment, like the crypto companies offering like on and off ramp capabilities, they like were charging over 7% in fees, and the banks, traditional PSPs, like they were not onboarding crypto companies. So I was wondering like why there's no one building like cross-border payment solutions similar to Air Wallets, like Corpay, Thunes, but instead of like asking the customers to deposit US dollars, they would ask for like collecting stable coins. So this is why I started BlindPay.
And then give us like the thesis as well behind how you went from, okay, we want to see working specifically on this sort of global cross-border payments solution, and then how does BlindPay actually come to be born? You go through Y Combinator as well. Give us a sense for what that entire process looked like.
Yeah, like the first thing that I realized when I was studying about those kind of companies is because like they have like local presence in a lot of markets worldwide. So the first thing that I did it was like to form a US entity and starting to do everything in the US perspective so we can like become global since like day one. Okay. So like we formed the entity, we like got the MSB registration, we are getting more license now, and we start to expand to Brazil and other Latin like regions as well, like Mexico. So yeah, like I realized that they focus a lot on this like regulatory landscape and local presence and building like the partnership with local banks like from scratch. So this is what like we started to do. We started to follow the same, and like when we started BlindPay, we started in July 2024. Since July to December, we were 100% bootstrapped. We had just like a single angel investor that was the general manager from Bitso. And in December, we got accepted to Y Combinator. And it was a mix of like the company having traction, the product like being really good, and the requests for startups from Y Combinator itself. So they were requesting stablecoin companies in the batch. So yeah, I believe these were like the reasons that we got accepted.
How did going through YC sort of rapidly change and accelerate all of BlindPay's development? What were the key insights that you guys took away from that program?
Yeah, like this question is really good because when we're talking like about fintechs, about payments, usually the first thing that will like bring you a customer or you're going to close a deal is when like they have trust on you, when like they trust that you are going to deliver the payments, they trust that your service, your APIs will like be will be the easiest one to integrate with. So when we joined YC, it was some kind of badge that like we are like accepted in the like the best accelerator in the world. So companies and startups like start to trust us more, and we start to close more deals just because of we had this like we were backed by Y Combinator and like huge investors that we have today. So yeah, like when we were bootstrapped, it was really hard to sell and make like customers to trust on us.
As somebody who has bootstrapped a number of businesses, I totally understand the bootstrapping journey. Perfect. So let's sort of now dive really deep into kind of the wider landscape and what you're emerging and why we started this podcast is because we believe that uh, frontier technologies have a much higher PMF in frontier markets, right? Where we can essentially leapfrog economic development by the use of technology. We saw it, for example, with WhatsApp, where we skipped from, phone calls and traditional phones. We skipped SMS and we went straight into WhatsApp, right? And that's how we propagated a lot of kind of development and economic progress. So, give us a sense for, BlindPay's go-to-market strategy. Why Latin America? What is unique about the conditions here in the market to get you really excited about saying, this is the market that we really want to drive our product through?
Yeah, like in the world, the cross-border payments landscape is already like huge in Latin America. I believe like Mexico and US is one of like the biggest rails related to remittances like in the world. And if we compare, okay, LATAM, like Africa, like if we compare like some emerging markets, okay, LATAM, Africa, and like Asia, like Southwest Asia in general, we can see that like in LATAM, there's a huge opportunity, like a lot of money already being moved through traditional rails. And the regulatory landscape is still like evolving, is still like progressing, In Africa, the market is smaller, even that the regulatory landscape like is still evolving there. In Asia, like the market is also huge, but the regulatory is already like consolidated. So it is really hard like to start in a lot of countries in the same time when it comes to the Asia perspective. So I believe the biggest opportunity it is in Latam because like the regulatory from all the countries are evolving at the same time. The like size of the volume that's being moved on traditional rails today is really huge. I believe like in 2023 it was like over 60 billion like per year. So yeah, like if we can migrate those like traditional payments that's happening like with banks and FX providers, traditional FX providers to the stablecoin space, this can be like really huge. This can evolve the stablecoin like landscape in general when it comes to liquidity, to faster settlement times, and the way that like companies are moving money between those regions. So yeah, this is why we start in LATAM specifically. Today, like our go-to-market strategy is like sell like US rails, sometimes Swift rails, and now we're expanding to Europe to LATAM like companies, okay? Because all the founders from LinePay are from LATAM, so like we can speak local language. So for us, it is easier to sell, and there is like still a huge opportunity here in LATAM for like the stablecoins industry in general.
Nice. I love that that all of you are from the region, and I think there's something that we've also sort of been discussing a lot because I think there's founders from Latin America that are operating in the region, and the opportunity is so massive that it just makes sense for people to like really lean into that opportunity and make the most out of it. And I also really love seeing Latin American sort of founders really crush it, right? And you guys have that nativity, which I think is super important. What do you think, being from the region, um, what unique edge or advantage have you found, perhaps? Because I think one of the other things that's important for us to discuss too is how competitive this environment is becoming, right? Is like stable coins in Latin America and what that unlocks for the region, I think are increasingly becoming a point of contention amongst a number of competitors, right? You guys being from the region, you've gone through the best accelerator in the world. I think you have sort of a right to win here, but specifically walk us through sort of the importance of what it means to be from the region and what upper hand that gives you when you think about the other folks who are competing in the similar space.
Yeah, like the first thing I believe it is the founders network. Okay, so like from the four blind faith founders, three of us we are second time founders. So all the networking that we have, like it is like increasing like the growth from the company as a whole, just because the connections that we created in LATAM. And besides that, there is this like speaking local language. So for example, let's pick Brazil. Okay, Brazil, only 5% of the population like speaks English fluently. Like some other countries in Latin America, like it is the same, just a small amount of the population like can talk in English. So for us, as we can speak like local language, this gives us like a huge advantage. We can sell like to traditional companies. We can sell to companies that they don't have like executives or people that talk in English. Like our goal is just like improve the companies to move money faster and cheaper like around the world. So yeah, we are doing a pretty good job when it comes to yeah, payments in general.
Nice. Yeah. I love the specifically, even just down to the language, right? I mean, there are companies in Latin America whose focus is to get people to figure out their go-to-market strategy, for example, in Brazil alone, right? And these are Latin American companies. So even being from Latin America isn't sufficient. It's like you even have to be from the specific country, like from Mexico, from Colombia, from Chile, right? And I think that's super critical as well, right? Um, Okay, so Bernardo, let's dive into a little bit more of how you're seeing kind of the stablecoin landscape evolve. Again, we've been speaking about sort of the competitive nature of this specific market, but what are the kind of major trends that you're seeing across stablecoins in Latin America, and where are people really trying to crush it and kind of create their wedge in the market?
Yeah, like this is a great question, and everything that I'm saying here can change like in the next week, okay? But what I've seen from like the landscape like evolution, I believe like all the goal for I will talk like on behalf of BlindPay, okay? So the goal for us is to try to dominate money movement, okay? So when we like are moving like a huge volume like every month, we will start to understand like why this like kind of money like is being moved. And when we understand, when we have data to understand this kind of like scenarios, we can start to like generate more products and find more ways to like get more revenue. Okay, so today everyone's talking about payments itself. The next step, like I believe like some companies are already doing this, it is like how we can allow customers to spend their stable coins on chain but in the real world. So like a lot of companies are issuing cards powered by stable coins. The next step, I think it is going to be, for example, lending. Okay, so how we can like provide like lending features on chain like in a trustable way, so people like can get more stable coins to do their like daily activities. So I believe the same thing that happened with like traditional banking as a service products will start as well to do in the like stable coins space. So yeah, like at first money movement, in the second phase will be like a global consolidation as a whole, okay, like a company that will connect to all the world region at the same time, plus these like products related to like the data that we have related to the money movement.
Yeah, and on that sort of creating that connectivity layer amongst all the kind of major financial players, how have your conversations gone with some of the folks who maybe they've barely heard of Bitcoin, right? And I'm curious to like learn more about sort of this go-to-market thesis and how you're managing to stablecoin pill key actors that move a lot of volume, but are still getting used to crypto, right? Like what does that conversation usually go? What gets people really excited about starting to use stable coins as sort of that underlying infrastructure?
Yeah, I think for the like consumer that like is dealing with crypto, I believe this is like the hardest part, okay? Because like companies will need to spend a lot of like marketing like money to like to say to people that like you can trust on stablecoins. Now you can use stablecoins for anything that you need to do in your daily operations. But when it comes to like traditional companies starting to use stablecoins, I believe this is like inevitable. Okay, So, for example, BlindPay, we are already talking with banks in Brazil that are looking for to enable payments powered by stablecoins for their end customers. And why they are like looking into that? Because stablecoins can accelerate their go-to market. Okay, so for example, a lot of banks in LATAM, they like the biggest banks. Okay, they provide some kind of global USD accounts capabilities. So they issue like accounts in the US, so their customers can move like US dollars. But for like more smaller banks, they don't have this capability because they need to open an operation in the US, like build a banking partner in the US, or sometimes they can build a partnership with like companies like Wise, okay? But it is really, really expensive to build a partnership with them. With stablecoins, they can accelerate their go-to market and offer this kind of global USD accounts powered by stablecoins for their end customers really quickly and like so much more like affordable in an affordable way than like traditional like ways that they have today to enable that. So yeah, like we are pretty hyped around the space and all the bank conversations that we're having. Like it is really really interesting to see that they are looking for this kind of solution.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think one of the key insights here is making things very clear. It's cheaper, it's faster, for the particularly for the institutions, right? And ensuring that that really drives home and kind of walking them through their current payment rails and then how they can rapidly shift to much more efficient systems through blind pay services, for example, right?
Yeah, and sometimes like you don't want to talk about like the Web3 terms, you don't talk about crypto, you don't talk about like anything related to the Web3 space. You need to abstract everything and show to the customer like this is the experience. The customer doesn't need to know that like it is stable coins in the background. So you need to have this kind of like language. You need to teach them how they can like leverage this kind of like new infrastructure, new technology to their end customers in a way that they don't like will they won't realize that they are using stable coins in the background.
Totally, fully agree with you. And again, it's just like that. I was just having dinner with somebody the other day, and they said like, "Wow, where do you see the future of crypto going?" And I was like, "Crypto's just going to exist in the background, right?" And I think it's sort of the consensus amongst everybody is like whether we talk about stable coins, zero knowledge cryptography, just distributed systems as a whole, crypto will just exist in the background, and the end user will have absolutely no idea that like these things are being powered by stable coins. At the moment, you want to send money from Chile to Brazil to Nigeria, all the way to Indonesia, and then back to Chile, you can do so in a matter of a few blocks, basically, right? So milliseconds at this point, and it'll happen with stablecoins, and I think that's really truly amazing. One of the things that I've oftentimes been thinking about as well, but I love your insights here, is like because oftentimes the pain point is on and off ramping, right? And how do we make that experience just like completely seamless? I know it's something that you guys work on as well, at BlindPay. Is where do you think the stable coins on and off ramping challenge will be solved with cards, or will it be solved by giving people access to on and off ramping directly to their banks that already have cards in them? Like, which one of those two avenues is more feasible and more exciting for consumers?
I think it depends. Okay, so for example, in Brazil, like cards are losing market for Pix because Pix is really good, like it's instant and free. But other like regions, for example, Colombia, that sometimes you need to trust in ACH that usually take hours. Okay, so in this case, I believe like cards will have more space on the stable coins like space. But like I believe the biggest challenge, especially in Latin America, like in emerging markets, when it comes to on and off ramp like fiat money, okay, I believe the biggest challenge it is related to liquidity. So like the bank transfers, it is hard to scale than cards, because like cards, like we can use like Visa, Mastercard infrastructure, and we can like allow the customers to use what they are like used to work with. Okay, but for the bank perspective, today it is easier to work like in countries that have like a lot of liquidity, for example, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina. But for some other countries like Peru, Chile, or like Bolivia, like that, we don't have a lot of liquidity when it comes to stable coin. It is really hard to enable like on and off ramp through like bank transfers seamlessly.
Interesting. So you see bigger economies that have more advanced like, financial infrastructure, cards won't be as relevant or important. But smaller economies with, where on and off ramping might be much more challenging. In that case, their cards will basically make a bigger dent in the economy.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
I like that. I like that thesis. How do you think about as well? The other thing that we oftentimes explore too is like local stablecoins and what happens with local stablecoins, and how do they begin to shift macroeconomics in with regards to nation states. So we've got Brazilian real, for example, that is on chain. There are a number of players that are like working in that. There's like an on chain Colombian peso. What happens to these particular stable coins or local stable coins in particular when they are now traded easily on chain? What happens to the local economies? How do FX rates sort of change? Do we try to dollarize everything? Do we shift to local stable coins? What are some of the trends, and what are you seeing there at the forefront there?
Yeah, like to be honest, I think there's a huge challenge when it comes to local stablecoins because the blockchain space is so much decentralized. Okay. So there are local stablecoins that are doing like a really good job, like in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina. But the FX liquidity, like on-chain FX liquidity, is really bad. Like you cannot move $1 million to that local stablecoin. Okay, so yeah, for this reason, I believe like local stablecoins will have like um, a lot of challenges when it comes to liquidity. And sometimes like you do have liquidity, for example, on Polygon, but if like the customer is using like Tron or Base or Arbitrum or Mainnet, they cannot use that local stablecoin, you know. So I believe it is so much like decentralized today, and there's a lot of like challenges ahead. So on the blind pay perspective, we are like dollarizing everything. Okay, so we only use USDC and USDT connected with all the fiat rails. We don't care like if there is one stable local stable coin or another local stable coin. We make sure that we're going to deliver the fiat money itself. Okay, so yeah, like this is blind pay vision. This can change in the future, yes, but right now we are dollarizing everything.
That's an interesting insight, because I know there are people that are working on the other thesis, which is like we want a local stablecoin everything, and I think it just, I mean, I personally think that it makes more sense and it's much more frictionless to go the dollar route, right, versus the local stablecoin route.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Great. So just as we think about sort of wrapping up here, we'd love some additional insights on what's coming up for BlindPay. Like what's really exciting for you guys? What's calling your sort of eyes and attention in the wider payments, DeFi, stablecoin landscape across Latin America that you think are interesting opportunity sets that people should be exploring and keeping an eye on?
Yeah, like for us, like as we came from the traditional fintech space, okay, like almost all the founders worked for like traditional banks. The goal for like the company vision is to keep like learning about the how the money like is moving in LATAM and start like to build features related to like the specific like use cases. And I believe the biggest opportunity is like how we can support traditional companies in the best way as possible. How we can abstract everything that we are doing on chain and use this like traditional language to talk with traditional companies and onboard them like on chain as well. So yeah, like we are already doing this. Like some smaller PSPs in Brazil that they didn't know about stable coins, they didn't know like how they could like move money worldwide, they are already connecting with BlindPay APIs, BlindPay services to allow this for their customers, like abstracting everything that is happening on the on chain. Okay. So yeah, like, and I believe the next like big step is when like banks start like to use stablecoin infrastructures like BlindPay or other players in the market. So yeah, like I'm really hyped about this. And like for the company perspective, for BlindPay perspective itself, for the next like few months, the goal is to expand to more world regions. So today, for example, we are operating like in US, in a lot of LATAM companies. We are already expanding to Europe, and we are planning to expand to Asia as well, especially to the APAC region, because like the corridor between LATAM and APAC is really big today. So yeah, like we're trying to accelerate like as soon as possible the connection between those rails, and like try to dominate the distribution like as fast as we can.
Awesome. What do you think is unlocked for these institutions once they start coming on chain? Once they start using crypto and stable coins, like what else? What's kind of step two for these institutions?
Yeah, like I believe the biggest challenge it is like who will be the first, because like if we get like the LATAM landscape, like the banks there, sometimes they like allow customers to buy USDC. Sometimes they allow like customers to like have like the custody of USDC and earn yield on that. Okay. Or sometimes they have some rewards program which they pay like some customers in crypto tokens. Okay. But there is no like player, like huge traditional player that are allowing like their customers to move money specifically worldwide using stablecoins. And I believe when the first player, like big players, start to do this and start to see the results around this, the next ones will like come as well and try to like understand what is happening, how they are doing that. So yeah, I believe it is. We just need a single example right now.
Totally agree. I'm excited for these. I mean, and the thing is, we're already seeing it, right? We're already seeing the larger U.S.-based institutions and some Asia-based institutions as well start to explore and figure out, hey, what can I do with this? My issuing my own stable coin, or what does Aave unlock for me that I previously didn't have, for example, right? And accelerating that development for these institutions, I think, is the other piece that is super exciting. And I think the other angle that I think stablecoins are just what makes sense to them right away because it's just like payments, right? So it's very easy, very clear for them to understand. I can't wait till they start, figuring out what Morpho is, for example, right? And they can start putting their own strategies on chain and really leaning heavily into DeFi. Uniswap, right? Using UniV4, for example. I think those are the opportunity sets also that are incredibly exciting, and I'm very much so looking forward to seeing that unfold as well.
Yeah, of course. And like one of the biggest challenges about BlindPay is because like as we are like pretty well positioned in the US, even that we are serving like most of our customers are from a TAM, we are like going to like US and talk like with banks there. So in the last 2 weeks I was in New York, and I visited some like really like traditional and huge banks in the US to like teach them like what is the stablecoin landscape in Latam that banks are embracing, like that banks are trying to build on top of stablecoins, and how like the US banks can support those like Latam banks in a like infrastructure way. So yeah, like it's really cool to like teach to the US banks what like our Brazilian banks specifically are trying to achieve with stablecoins. So yeah, like we can see some huge opportunities ahead around that.
Nice, awesome, Bernardo. Well, listen, man. Um, Anything else as we start thinking about wrapping up? Any last sort of call outs before we ship up the pod?
No, I don't think so. I think like I love the questions. I think I could give like some small vision, that I had like working on this industry for the past year. And like one cool thing about BlindPay, like you mentioned about the bootstrapped like bootstrapped way to start a company that is really tough in the early days. But just to give more context, like how fast like companies like BlindPay is growing. When we were bootstrapping last year, like from July to December, we processed $900K. It was not even like $1 million. In the last month, in July, we processed over $45 million in a single month. And we cannot like wait for the next months, And we like as we are using stable coins, we could do everything in a bootstrapped way. So I don't think like stable coins just like cool because like it is faster or cheaper. It is because it gives like opportunities to people like us that I was like just a developer, to build like huge fintechs like in the upcoming months. So yeah, this this opportunity that stablecoins are giving for the whole industry, for the next generation like of fintech leaders, it's really amazing.
Nice, man. Oh, congrats on that. And again, I think being able to do that bootstrapped as well, and then kind of going through YC and accelerating your development massively there is also really exciting. So, Bernardo, what a pleasure to have you on Frontera. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Stablecoin conference as well in Mexico City. And where can people find you, by the way? Where can they connect with you?
I am active in LinkedIn, okay, Bernardo Simonassi, my name, and Twitter as well.
Perfect, man. Well, we'll be sure to include all the links. And thank you so much for coming by Frontera.
Amazing. Thank you, Kush. See you. Bye bye. Have a
Ciao,
nice
ciao.
day.
Bye.